What's going on, football fans? It's time once again for another rendition of the Pound for Pound. I'm your host, J.R. Clark, and today we're going to be talking about preseason. We're done. We're done with the preseason. It's a wrap. It's finished. We've had the 50, the cut down to the 53 man. We've set up the practice squad, and now it's time to get ready for week 1 in Chicago. So let's just do a little bit of house cleaning. Let's talk about the last preseason game. And let's talk about some of the guys who got cut and some of the ones who didn't. All right. So the biggest name out of all of it, I guess, in a way, is former second-round pick Rashid Hageman. He was officially released from the team today after being put on the commissioner's exempt list yesterday. This all stems back from a domestic violence issue of March of last year. A lot of people are on two sides of this thing. One side being, as soon as it got announced that he was being investigated, that he should have been released right then. Some people are on the side of let the legal process, play out. Then once the verdict has been announced or, come to, then you make your decision. So either way, however you fall on it, Rashid Hageman is no longer a part of the Atlanta Falcons. And so everybody's like, well, who are you going to get to replace him? Well, being on the exempt list, he already wasn't on our 53-man roster for this season. So they already made their choice of who was going to replace him. Hence the reason why I think that you have, you still have on this roster, Upshaw and Brooks Reed and Derek Shelby, some of the guys who were kind of floated around as potential surprise cuts. I think the Falcons had a pretty good idea that this was coming down. So, they kept those guys on the roster instead. All right, so the fourth preseason game, preseason as a whole, we went 0-4. Big deal. I know a lot of people want to make it a big deal, but it's hard for me to get that worked up about preseason at all. You have teams that went 4-0 in the preseason and then sucked it up in the regular season. A la Detroit Lions when they went 0-16. They went 0-4 or 4-0 in the preseason. Then you had teams in the 80s, I believe it was, the Redskins went 0-4 and then won the Super Bowl. So preseason is not a real good indicator of what the regular season is going to be. What I did like to take away from the preseason is that the defense looks real good. And that's the starters and the immediate backups. I mean, they had 3 or 4 turnovers in the fourth game, so and recovered them. So that's good. These are things that you wanted to see. Some of the standouts from the fourth game actually made it on the team. The Jermaine Grace. I always want to say Jeremiah for some reason. Jermaine Grace, the linebacker out of Miami. He actually made it on the 53-man squad. Now we'll get to see whether he's active on a game weekly basis or not, but at least he made it on the squad. I think that's probably mainly to do with Leroy Reynolds. Don't know the extent of whatever injury he has. So, Grace may have been just a backup plan for Leroy Reynolds. I don't know or see him, at least early on, making an impact, but he might. Who knows? Who knows how any of this goes? We didn't think anything about Brian Poole until he showed up and just started making plays. So there's always that one undrafted guy, and Grace looks like he might be that guy this year. Some of the more notable cuts from the preseason stars was Chris Odom. A lot of people felt like we should have kept him. He got snapped up by the Packers. So we'll see. We'll see if he makes an impact on their squad. I'm sure that they were hoping to be able to stash him on the practice squad, but it just didn't work out this year. I mean, you had to know that there were going to be some defensive line talent that got released, whether it been an undrafted guy or a named guy, because we have a lot of talent along the defensive line. So there was going to be some quality players that didn't make this team that made other teams, So unfortunately, a fan favorite this preseason, Odom, was one of those guys. But another fan favorite made it onto the practice squad, and that was the Jatarius Jones, the defensive end, the guy who wore number 55. he made it on our practice squad along with Marvin Hall, who did a pretty good job in the wide receiver ranks during the preseason. Reggie Davis, the UGA prospect, did not make this team. They were probably, I say probably, I'm going to assume that they were probably wanting to try to stash him on the practice squad, but he got snapped up by, I want to say the Bills. I could be wrong on that. I can't remember who got him, but somebody snapped him up. I think all in all, we had 3 or 4 guys get snapped up off the waiver wire, which is interesting. It lets you know that our scouting department is doing a lot better than it has done in years past, trying to identify some of these guys. If you got other NFL teams wanting to snap up the guys you're letting go. So, but that pretty much wraps up preseason. I mean, I don't think it was. I mean, yeah, you wanted to get a win, but I think this coaching staff cares more about individual evaluation versus getting, a win. Of course, they want to win, but that's not what they're out there doing. It's almost more of a Belichickian style. I mean, I believe if you would have let Bill Belichick have, 4 weeks of joint practices, he would do that and not play in the preseason. But that's just kind of been his style. And it seems like Dan Quinn is more wanting to evaluate individual players versus trying to necessarily win a game in preseason. So that's been real interesting the past few years to watch that. So now kind of give you a quick, run up to week 1. I'm sure either me or Toby will do a better video coming, closer to the game. But we got the Chicago Bears in Chicago. So that'll be interesting. We still don't know exactly who's going to start, whether it's going to be Glennon or whether it's going to be Trubisky. For most part, I think the start of the season is going to be Glennon, so that'll be interesting. We should be, some of our guys and coaching staff is going to be familiar with him from scouting with, Tampa Bay. So we should have at least a good idea of what he can do and what he can't do. I'm going to be really interested to see what this front looks like, in true live game action for 4 quarters, type deal. Once they get into a rhythm, same thing with the offense. The offense has to get into a rhythm. They haven't been on the field long enough to get into that rhythm per se in the preseason. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. But look for a more concise video on the run up to week 1. Also, for folks who like Facebook, we just created a Pound for Pound Facebook page. You can go search us out there. You can give us a follow. We're going to be trying to, post more stuff there. Maybe even do like a Facebook Live or something like that. Just trying to expand the community as best we can. Reach people where they're at type deal. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. Share us, like us on YouTube. The more feedback we get, the more we know y'all are enjoying it, So that's all I got for you today. Like I said, wrap up on preseason. We're done. We're in the books. Now we're on to the real games. So as always, Falcons fans, rise up.